is not true. Decreases due to the increased supply of money in circulation. Hyperinflation occurs when the government spends more money than it has. In The How Economy Grows and Why It Crashes, Frankie D comes into power, and after promising government programs to create jobs and stimulate the economy, he then decides to make fish reserve notes that back up the value of one real fish. This allows government to print money whenever they want to spend for citizens when, in reality, they were hurting them through fishflation. Through all of this government spending, the bank's supply of fish ran out, resulting in the construction of multiple new fish through the dissection of one original fish. This hurt the citizens because all of their original fish steadily continued to lose value as the government spent more money on programs that failed to help the economy due to the lack of increased production. Eventually, fishflation led to the value of fish reserve being worthless. This death spiral is known as hyperfishflation, which diminished inventories from the lack of production, prices soared. The fear of shrinking fish caused every fish caught to be immediately consumed, resulting in no savings, no credit, and no investment. In order to truly help grow the economy, it must be left alone to recover through true demand and production instead of artificial demand created by the government. Also, there must be a strong dollar to help prevent inflation.
The definition of savings is income that is not used for consumption. Saving creates the capital that allows for the expansion of production. If total saving rises, more investment funds become available to businesses. Those firms will use most of these funds for capital investment. Higher saving then leads to higher investment, and thus to higher amounts of capital per worker. In other words, higher savings leads to capital deepening, which is increasing the amount of capital per worker. In the long run, more savings will lead to higher output and income for the population and raising GDP and the standard of living. At the beginning of How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes, both Abel, Baker, and Charlie had an excess supply of fish in their savings after utilizing their new nets. They then used their savings to invest in a better form of capital. This mega fish catcher would take more than 20 fish to make, but could catch 30 fish a week. This increased the production possibilities of the island and allowed them to spend more on other goods and services to stimulate the economy. Later in the story, a much greater savings was needed in order to fund the biggest project yet, the waterworks. If the island had not saved up enough to purchase, it would have been impossible to fund the project. This greater savings required increased the risk, however, it also increased the potential reward to justify it. Once the waterworks was finished, citizens were able to divert their time from hauling water to the production of goods and services and the development of new capital projects. As a result of this increased productivity, living standards rose. It is very important for countries and individuals to always be saving to help best grow the economy.
Specialization occurs when producers decide to produce only certain goods and services. Specialization is determined by a nation's natural resources and by its human and physical capital. When nations specialize in producing certain goods, they obtain the goods they don't or can't produce through trade. When allowed to flourish unhindered, free trade benefits everyone. According to Hedwig, each person, country, or island will naturally use its own particular advantages to get the most reward for what it has. In the nation of Bongobia, all the citizens had perfected the art of making bongos so much that they were nearly worthless domestically. On the island of Dervishia, bongos were a scarce and valuable trade good. Unfortunately, they lacked the correct trees to make them. However, they had an abundance of tanning oil, which they didn't need, while the citizens of Bongobia suffered from chronic sunburns. Through trade, each nation used its competitive advantage, which we will discuss soon, to send products that were wanted or needed more elsewhere. This benefited both islands greatly and increased living standards. The money saved due to cheaper goods from other countries can be used in other industries domestically to help boost the economy even more. A country has a comparative or competitive advantage in the product that it can produce most efficiently given all the products it could choose to produce. According to the law of comparative advantage, a nation is better off when it produces goods and services for which it has a comparative advantage. A person or nation has an absolute advantage when it can produce more of a given product using a given amount of resources. The problem with our economy today is that we have more focus on consumption rather than on production. We need to increase our production in the United States to increase our exports and decrease our imports in order to get rid of our trade deficits. If we focus on the things that we can make more efficiently than anyone else, then we can trade those products for the things that the others produce better. Unfortunately, due to the United States' artificially high currency, high taxes, and restrictive wage and labor laws, it is not competitive enough in enough product categories. In the Hedwig book, Sinopia started to trade actual fish to Usonia in exchange for fish reserves. Eventually, Sinopia started to sell everything it produced to Usonia. Usonia's downfall at the end of the book is a prime example of how the lack of production can destroy an economy. Sinopia quickly surpassed Usonia economically due to its consistent production of goods and services. Estonia needed to produce certain products that they can make more efficiently than any other country, and then trade those products in order to successfully stimulate the economy. This focus on only a certain amount of goods or services is known as specialization. Specialization is determined by a nation's natural resources and by its human and physical capital. When nations specialize in producing certain goods and they obtain the goods they don't or can't produce through trade.
Loans and credit are necessary for an economy to grow. They allow people to make risks in order to advance their capital or invent new technology, which increases the total production possibilities. Loans also include the risk that a certain investment might lose money and leave both the lender and the borrower at loss. This is why interest rates are necessary in order to compensate lenders for that risk. Interest rates are self-sustaining. When a bank has a lot of money, they reduce the interest rates to give incentives to spend and take out loans. And when the bank has very little money, they increase interest rates in order to make people not want to take out loans and to give incentive for people to save. This system naturally prevents recessions unless the government tries to intervene. For example, in how an economy grows and why it crashes, when the government pays banks back for loans that fail and makes the bank have lower rates, this drove the economy into a recession. And in order for it to work properly, interest rates must be left alone and not regulated by the government. A great example of a good loan in the story was when Abel took out a huge loan to create the waterworks, which increased production possibilities and quality of life for everyone. Another example is when Charlie got a big loan to build 12 new shirt shops, which vastly increased his production possibilities. When loans and rates are used properly without regulation, they can help with the growth of an economy. At the end of the story, loans for houses started to be handed out like candy. Unfortunately, these loans failed to expand the island's productive capacity or increase the borrower's capacity to repay the loan. This quickly became dangerous to the economy as these loans wasted savings and discouraged new businesses. The increasing demand for houses drove prices so high up that when it peaked, nobody could sell. When their houses became worth less than the loans, citizens and loans companies fell into crisis. This crash of the housing market could be prevented if the government didn't mess with interest rates and let the economy regulate itself. Also, the government must quit reimbursing bad bank loans to prevent high-risk credit, or else citizens will be swamped in debt that they are not able to pay.
Entitlements are social welfare programs that people are entitled to if they meet certain eligibility requirements. The federal government guarantees assistance for all those who qualify. As that number rises, mandatory spending follows suit. Examples of entitlement programs include Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Other United States discretionary spending includes defense spending, which is about 50% of the total spending, education, training, scientific research, student loans, technology, law enforcement, environmental cleanup, housing, transportation, land management, foreign aid, and farm subsidies. In Keynesian economics, the economy is composed of three sectors: individuals, businesses, and governments, and the government actions can make up for changes in the other two. The belief is that the government should buy goods and services on its own to encourage production and increase employment. Then these new wages would lead to more spending, then more production. This cycle would eventually help the economy enough that the government could back off. The government can only cut taxes to encourage spending and investing by consumers and businesses. The new jobs created by the government are less productive because their goal is employment and not efficient production. The government can also reduce inflation by raising taxes or lowering spending. In Hegwick, Frank Deep found a way to gain support by making it seem like he was giving something to the islanders for free. In reality, the government can only spend what it has in taxes. After a particularly bad monsoon, Frankie D. ran for senator-in-chief, saying he would institute a government reconstruction program for our neediest citizens to repair the damages. He started many programs to create jobs, including building infrastructure and polishing rocks. This gave Americans jobs, but failed to fix the economy, since the production capability was not increased. According to Peter Schiff, infrastructure should be left to private companies due to their greater efficiency and lack of corruption. Later in the book, when the economy was in an even worse depression, the new Senator-in-Chief, Barry Okuda, promised much greater government efforts to turn the island's economy around. He increased government assistance to first-time home buyers and schools, and made student loans easier to get as well. He then authorized the building of a new lighthouse that had no productivity benefit, arguing that the jobs would boost the economy. He finally made programs such as Cart for Cars and the Shady Swamp Construction to provide even more jobs to help stimulate the economy, or so he thought. In reality, these activities failed to expand productive capacity, as well as diverting scarce labor and capital to unnecessary causes. If left alone, market forces would have determined the best use for remaining investment capital, through self-interest and free enterprise. Allowing self-interest to flourish without government intervention is the best way to grow an economy.